This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Juan Gonzalez. Welcome to all of our listeners and viewers around the country and around the world. A new report we covered here on Democracy Now! Called Lynching in America has brought the legacy of racial terror back into the public conversation. And now federal authorities are reportedly investigating whether people who carried out one of the worst mass lynchings in recent history are still alive and can be brought to justice. It was July 25th, 1946, when a white mob in rural Georgia ambushed a car carrying two African-American couples, dragged them out, and shot them to death. One of the men, George Dorsey, was a military veteran who had recently returned from serving 5 years overseas in World War II. His wife, Mae Murray Dorsey, was also killed. Dorothy Malcolm, the other woman in the car, was 7 months pregnant. The mob cut her open and removed her unborn child. Her husband, Roger, had just been bailed out of jail after he was accused of stabbing a white man. A coroner estimated people in the crowd fired more than 60 shots at the two couples at close range. The horrific attack was carried out near Walton County, Georgia, not far from Moores Ford Bridge. It became known as the Moores Ford lynching and sparked a national outcry, even prompting President Harry Truman to push for civil rights reform. The FBI also investigated, but no one was ever convicted of the four murders.
Now that could all change. A relative of one of the men allegedly involved in the attack has come forward in a videotaped interview with the NAACP. Wayne Watson says his uncle and several other men he named were members of the Ku Klux Klan. This is a clip from his 2013 interview with then-president of the NAACP, Ben Jealous.
If people try to bribe me, I've been to prison, a detention center.
Why does this case bother you so much? I mean, you've had a lot of people ask you to keep your mouth shut.
Yeah.
Why do you stay interested in it?
Why?
Yeah.
Because I'm tired of it. I'm tired of when you go through life, you living with lies or you living with people talking about things. I want it all over with. The racism, I mean, I've been on the street and, you know, I told people I dated a black woman and everything, and you can't get nothing. A white man goes around here and says he dating a black woman or hang around black people. You can't get no loan, you can't go to no bank, borrow money or nothing. They turn you down.
This week, the Guardian newspaper reported that after Wayne Watson's interview, the FBI spoke with one of the men he identified, his uncle, his father's brother, a man named Charlie Peppers, who's now 86 years old. Peppers said two FBI agents visited him last year and questioned him for about 40 minutes. The FBI has not confirmed the report, but says the probe into the attack remains an active investigation. Well, for more, we're joined by Edward Dubose, a member of the NAACP National Board and former president of the Georgia branch of the NAACP. He's a longtime participant in an effort to bring those accountable for the Moores Ford lynching to justice. We are also joined by Herb Boyd, Harlem-based activist, teacher, author, and journalist. He worked on a documentary about the lynching with the filmmaker Keith Beauchamp. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Ed Dubose, tell us what happened that day, as you understand it.
First of all, good morning, and thank you for having me on the show. You know, we have been long talked about this case. We know that. How this case came about, to give you a little background. Mr. Malcolm, allegedly, and we know that to be the case, stabbed the gentleman, Mr. Hester, but it was rumored that he had been sleeping with Mr. Malcolm's wife. And so we know that after this incident, Mr. Malcolm was arrested. Not even 3 weeks later, he was bail was posted for him. And this gentleman, his wife, Mr. Dorsey, and his wife were all taken to this Moores Ford Bridge, where they were brutally lynched. And as you all stated in the beginning of the show, shot over 60 times. We know that there was a grand jury that was impaneled. Over 50 suspects of interest were interviewed, but no one was ever accused. No one was ever arrested. And so we have this mass public lynching, one of the last mass public lynchings one of the most egregious acts, and included in this is a World War II veteran. No one has ever been brought to justice in this case, and so we're so glad that you all and other media outlets are taking a look at this case as we continue to push for justice.
Now, there was wasn't there an Associated Press report several years ago that claimed that there was some indication that the governor at the time, Eugene Talmadge, had actually visited that particular town, spoken to the brother of the man who had been stabbed, and basically said anybody who takes care of the African American who was involved in this, they don't have to worry. Is that?
That's absolutely correct. And remember, during that time, Governor Talmadge ran on the platform, segregation now, segregation forever. You know, and so he was politically motivated, and many would say empowered the people in this community to let them know it's okay. You know, African American, black life don't matter. And so you're absolutely correct. Governor Talmadge, in his own right, sent a message to this county and to the state.
So talk about Wayne Watson naming names and just who Wayne Watson is.
Wayne Watson is a gentleman from Monroe, Georgia, Walton County, who had been sought out by one of our people in the county. People had always said that there was no one alive, there was no one available that would be able to shed light on this case. Well, we're so glad that Mr. Watson was found, and we were able to bring our then president, Ben Jealous, to interview with Mr. Watson. His interview was so compelling that initially we were just talking to him, but he began to name names and locations and people and places, and our president Jealous said, wait a minute, we need to get this on tape. This guy's talking about very compelling information that the FBI need to be aware of.
So let's go back to that interview that the former president of the NAACP, Ben Jealous, did with Wayne Watson, who says he previously reported his allegation to local law enforcement officials.
Alan Cook, the DA, was trying to find out who knew about it, nothing like that. And evidently, my attorney told somebody or told him. Because next thing I know, everybody in Walton County knew I was the one that knew about the KKK, who's alive. And people tried to bribe me. I've been to prison, a detention center, and they offered me money. Robert Mitchell offered me $250,000 to keep my mouth shut and walk away in '99. I told him I wouldn't do it. He said, you'll be dead before you ever testify.
That, again, another part of that Wayne Watson interview with Ben Jealous. Ed Dubose, if you could comment on that, and also, how was Dr. King involved? I mean, this lynching was 1946.
Yeah, and again, first of all, let me thank also State Representative Tyrone Brooks. I don't want to be on the show without giving him the credit due for convening us in this case. So Dr. King had been informed about this case. Dr. King had made a commitment that after he left Memphis, that he would be visiting Walton County. And so Dr. King never made it. You'll recall that Dr. King was assassinated. But Dr. King was always interested in this case and coming to Walton County to speak out on this injustice.
And Herb Boyd, talk about the significance of this case and why you got involved in a documentary on it.
But it's really Keith Beauchamp's idea. You know, he had put together the untold story of Emmett Till. And it has pushed him more and more into the history of lynching. It's good to see that Brian Stevenson, you know, has brought out that study and connecting it up in terms of contextualizing 1946. Here's a returning veteran, gone off, you know, fought for this country to come home, virtually still in uniform, you know, when he's abducted, along with his wife, along with Roger Malcolm and Dorothy. She's 7 months pregnant. So when we heard about that, Keith said, let's do this one. And the most powerful thing about his documentary is the reenactment that we do on that particular incident.
And what did you discover at that time in terms of what has been investigated?
Well, you know, we were looking at how the FBI, you know, would be involved in this situation because they had given the other cases we had worked on, had given us every indication that they were going to seriously pursue this situation. Tyrone Brooks was very, very instrumental in helping us understand the background of the situation. But I don't know. You know, it just kind of stalled at that point. We went on to other projects, and only recently, with it popping up in the news again, we have to go back and revisit and take a look again at the kind of research we did on that situation.
And DuBose, at this point, what are you calling for now?
Well, we've endorsed a letter last year and even this year to the Senate Judiciary Committee. We want the Congress and the Senate, the U.S. Congress and Senate, to take a look at this case, call for an investigation of this case. But keep in mind, in 2008, then Congressman John Lewis and Senate Christopher Dodd sponsored the Emmett Till bill, which allocated resources for cold cases. It has never been fully funded. And so, one, we wanted to be fully funded to give the resources to the Federal Bureau of Investigation that they need. If that's the holdup, give them the money that they needed that has already been voted on. And President Obama can do that. And so we hope that people who are watching will join us in reaching out to your Congress or Senate and tell them to communicate with Mr. Grassley, Chairman Grassley, to allow this case to be investigated and those responsible brought to justice. If we can find Nazis in the United States who've committed atrocities, certainly we can find people in Walton County, Georgia.
And there's an indication that there are still several people who may have participated in that are alive.
We are convinced that, and we believe that the FBI is convinced, we hope that they move, that there are people still alive who were involved in this case. There were over 200 people on that bridge. You couldn't tell me that all of them are dead now.
Charlie Pepper?
Charlie Pepper, I believe, knows more than what Charlie Pepper is saying. And I hope they continue to interview him.
We were just showing the reenactment from the film that Herb Boyd worked on with Keith Duchamp of the 1946 lynching. We thank you both for being with us. Ed DuBose is member of the NAACP National Board and former president of the Georgia branch of the NAACP, who has worked for years on the case, wanting to try to bring those accountable in the Moores Ford lynching to justice. And Herb Boyd, we ask you to stay with us because next up we're talking about Malcolm X on this, the 50th anniversary of his assassination. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. Back in a minute.